Welcome to Our Hen House. This is Jasmine Singer.
This is Marianne Sullivan.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. Marianne will be speaking with Gina Lynn, who is the founder of New Life Sanctuary, which has a very special mission to rescue and rehabilitate animals from laboratories.
As soon as I heard about New Life, which has been around for a while, I just was not familiar with it, that I wanted this interview because I think it's such a fascinating idea. Now, if you hear noise in the background, it's Rose and I can't stop her, so just put up with it.
Right. She's kind of walking around in a very dramatic fashion. Anyhow, this week on the bonus segment, you'll be continuing your discussion with Gina.
Yes, as always, if you're a Flock member, you'll get the link to the bonus segment in your email on the Tuesday after this podcast goes up, or you can always find it on the Flock Facebook group. And if you are not a member of the Flock, this would be such a great time to join if you can afford it. And I know a lot of people can't. If you're one of those who can, you can join for $10 a month at ourhenhouse.org/donate, or this is a really, really great time to take the alternative and bargain route of joining for $100 a year because, well, you tell us, Jasmine.
Because between now and the end of the year, all donations are being tripled thanks to some very fancy and fabulous donors. All donations up to $20,000 are being tripled. So as I've mentioned before, we do the majority of our fundraising for the entire year in December. In fact, in the last 2 weeks of December. So I hope that you are able to join the Flock. We have some really great perks that we offer.
We've been announcing this every week. Oh, that's Birdie, the Chihuahua. There's a lot of background noise in this episode. Sorry. And the fact that the donations are tripled, we've just been saying it every week, but seriously, holy moly.
Yeah. And we need it. I mean, I just saw this awful piece today in the Wall Street Journal. It was just so backwards and messed up. And I just thought, thank God we have our hen house. We have like this pro-animal, vegan-friendly, responsible, LGBTQ-run, women-founded nonprofit that is giving you media that speaks to the heart of what's going on behind closed doors for animals. And to get us through this year, we've been increasing the perks that we offer to our Flock members. We have these Zoom calls every Friday at 4 p.m., and we've really been enjoying those. So I hope you can join us. We have our bonus content that you get every single week if you're a member of the Flock. And we've got the Flock Facebook group. And if you make a donation of $100, I will also send you a personalized video.
And we're almost as big as the Wall Street Journal. Very close. We're closing in on them at any moment.
Well, sort of. We'll go with that. So before we get to the interview, it's been a wonderful, gift-filled, fried food-filled last 8 days. Well, I guess more than 8 days because of when this airs. But it was Hanukkah this past week, and I celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas. And
any other holiday you can get your fingernails into,
especially if there's fried food involved. And there's so many vegan versions of the fried foods available that are iconic for Hanukkah foods. The latkes, the jelly donuts, insert everything else. A lot of the Hanukkah gelt is vegan just by default. Add the extra layer and look for the ethically sourced slavery-free chocolate, and you have got yourself a celebration.
Are we going to sing the latke song?
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Latkes, 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 we made them out of oppression, and since I cannot eat them, I go into a depression.
But of course, we can eat your latkes and lots of people's latkes because you don't have to put an egg in them.
Mm-hmm. And actually, it's, Mayim Bialik, who is, of course, a pretty cool vegan. She has Mayim's Vegan Table is her cookbook, and she has veganized all of these recipes. She also recently blurbed and shared about my book, which is now out, called The Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan. So I was very excited when Blossom shared it on her Instagram. She was on our hen house once.
Excited. You were beyond yourself.
Well,
you're toning it down a lot, just like you were when we had her on.
Yeah.
Jasmine we did the interview together, which is what we used to do when we first started. And Jasmine wanted to take the lead on it because, I was really a little too old to watch Blossom. I might have seen it once. I don't know. And Blossom was Jasmine's childhood hero. So we started the interview and you became so completely tongue-tied. I've never heard you tongue-tied before or since, but I had to take over and do the interview.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Well, thanks for that. for telling the story and genuinely for helping me out. Anyhow, she was one of our many guests. I think over the years we've had thousands of guests because we used to do 2 interviews on every episode. And now we do longer form single interviews on most episodes. But anyhow, we've had like thousands of guests on, and it's really inspiring to look back at who our guests have been over the last 11 years. Though, sometimes we'll realize someone's no longer vegan, or we'll realize that someone's been Me Too'd and they were on our show, or, oh my God, they're COVID deniers. How could we have had them on? But, we've had thousands of people on. If you look at them in a pie chart, that is a very small sliver of the people who we've had on.
And it just does bring up the whole issue of, like, what if we had known this beforehand? And where is the line that we draw that we wouldn't have somebody as a guest? And I mean, in particular, we have had people on who are not vegan because they have written a book or have a particular expertise, usually either with wildlife or with companion animal issues, because as we all know, a lot of people in those movements are not necessarily vegan, but they might have something really interesting to share. But it's always a tough decision.
Right. And I do want to say that's very infrequently, like 99.8% of the time our guests are vegan. And every now and then someone is not vegan because we're having them on to discuss something that's not farm to animal related. And we try very hard to find someone who's doing that work, but who is vegan. And sometimes it's not possible. And we're pretty transparent about that on those episodes. And again, it's few and far between. Maybe it happened like once in the last year. But it is something that comes up for us a lot because, you could have someone who's not vegan who has this information that we would really like to share with you and with us. We could also have a vegan on who is, they don't consume animals, but that doesn't mean that their other behavior is non-oppressive. So.
Well, if they've been Me Too'd, we're probably not going to have them on.
Well, we would never have them on again, but like sometimes.
Oh, yeah. We don't subtract interviews.
Like can you please send us a list of every woman you've ever dated or worked with in the past so we could interview all of them before you come on, and we're just going to put together an assessment of whether or not you are.
I think we should actually do that.
Okay, we'll start doing that. Jen, if you're listening.
We can clean up this movement in a minute.
Please put that on the agenda for 2021 vision boarding. Anyway, so you had an interesting kind of way of looking at it.
Well, I don't know whether it's interesting or not, but it did occur to me the other day. This has something to do with Jane Austen, who was not vegan. Don't get your hopes up on that. But I love Jane Austen books. I'm sure many people listening do as well, because a lot of people in the world love her books and Pride and Prejudice and the movies and the whole 9 yards. And they're very obviously well written, and they're very insightful about personal relationships. I love a romance novel, but these actually are I don't know whether the original, but they are romance novels, but at a much, much higher level. But I love them. All right, this is where I'm going with this. Like the whole world that Jane Austen wrote about and wrote in, and all of her characters inhabited, was built on slavery and colonialism. I mean, that's the reason they had he has $50,000 a year. Can you believe it? And yeah, you kind of have to either not know that or just put it aside to enjoy the book. And like, where do you draw that line? And it just makes me feel, I was thinking about that, and it just occurred to me that it's kind of the same thing as having a guest on who's really interesting and passionate about wildlife. And you just have to ignore the fact that they don't get the big picture, that they don't really share my attitude towards animals. Only some animals. Actually, this reminds me of a fight we had with your brother the first day I met him. It was the stupidest fight, which is not usual, I have to say. But it was all about whether you could call somebody an animal activist because they were a companion animal activist. And we must have argued because I just couldn't give up, because I took the position that you're not really an animal activist unless you get it about all the animals. Right. And he took the opposite position, that as long as you care about some animals, it's fine. Yeah, that was all right. Fun. Yeah, I shouldn't be repeating this because it's boring as shit. But
it's basic. I mean,
it does bring up this. I'm sure everybody among you struggles with this all the time. What do you do with people who are so passionate about some animals and don't get it about the rest? It's just so weird. People are so weird.
And And when we're doing the, research for those episodes and, doing the questions, let's just add in it at the end, well, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, by the way, before you go, so can you explain why you're a hypocrite? I don't think.
But we could ask that, but obviously we don't bring people on to be rude to them.
Right.
And I don't like to ask them anything about whether they're vegan or not, because that just gives them an excuse to trot out their nonsense about why they're not vegan. And, their defense, you people don't have to listen to that. So it's always a struggle. Right. Yeah. Why doesn't everybody just stop eating animals?
It does. It reminds me a little bit of how I really want to be a person in this world who enjoys the things that I want to enjoy that are available to me. And I don't want to always let the one oppressive piece of that get in the way of my enjoyment. If there's a movie and there's a scene where they're wearing fur or something, I still want to watch the movie because it's a great movie that otherwise interests me. Where do you draw the line? Or, we've discussed in the past baking competitions, which I don't watch, but mostly because they don't interest me. I know you watch them and you just kind of veganize them in your head.
I watch the British, whatever it is.
British
baking show,
right.
Whatever it is.
The Great Oppressive British baking show.
I don't know why, because it gives me anxiety, because I can't stand it when people's cakes fall. And I mean, obviously the milk, I can just put that sort of aside and assume it's soy milk, even though it's not. I don't know why I can watch that. Well, I can't watch shows that have meat. And occasionally they have a meat thing and I just skip that part of the episode.
Well, I do with Queer Eye, for example, almost always, except for I think one time, which was when they were featuring some young woman with the Sunshine Party. But that was the only time that their cooking segment featured vegan food. And I just fast forward it. So the point is, I love the show Queer Eye. I love Jonathan Van Ness. I love to watch
Anyway, the cooking portion of that show is so bad that it would be unwatchable even if I was an omnivore.
So kind of bringing it back to the point here, I think that we need to exist in the world and find where our lines are. And I think it's okay if they're in different places from the other person. But when it comes to our hen house, like I said, 99.98% of the time, we're going to be having vegans. And occasionally there's some very specific reason why we're not. And I can guarantee that there was a very lengthy discussion before that happened. We don't go into that without our eyes open.
And also, I just want to mention, we're not having this conversation on this episode because there is any question about whether our guest this week is vegan.
She's vegan.
She is passionately vegan.
Right. So sort of switching gears for a moment, I because it was Hanukkah, one of the gifts I got was a new tarot deck. And, I believe that you can opt into magical thinking. And I sort of like to play around with things like that. So I got this new tarot deck because it's like a queer deck. And the one that I have is a very straight deck. So I was doing a reading and on someone else, and I did it was fine. Like we found meaning in it. And then I did a reading on myself and it was so bad. Like every card in it was like, you're making terrible decisions. You're going to self-isolate and go into deep shame about the fact that you're ruining your life.
I think you need a new deck.
And then I was like, I'm going to pick another card about this. And so I did a single card draw, and it was the death card, which I know doesn't necessarily mean it's not necessarily bad, but it was so funny to me how bad it was. But the reason that I'm even bringing this up is not to tell you that I'm a terrible tarot reader, but I am. But that's not why. The reason I'm bringing it up is because one of the things I did get from it is I keep putting myself in these professional situations where I have to self-advocate in these super weird ways that should be obvious. And I was getting from this, you have to change these patterns and you have to stop taking these kinds of roles. And it's nothing I talk about here. It's not Kinder Beauty at all. I love that job. It's freelance work I do that I don't talk about in general. And I started to think, well, if I want to make these changes, then I have to actually make them. I'm not going to wake up one day and these changes to my 41 years of patterns will have just automatically shifted. We have to do the hard work. We have to do the self-introspection, the shifting of ourselves, and we have to make changes possible. I was telling you this, and of course, you being you brought that sort of into activism and how we need to step up. We need to each step up in our own lives with our own advocacy and our own definitions of what leadership means.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking about leadership. I wasn't sure how it related to tarot, but I'm sure there is a way since everything can be related to tarot. But I was really thinking about this past year or the past 4 years. And I just think that the one thing that we can all take from this year is that leadership matters, that it really makes a huge difference who is in charge. I don't think that I've ever really thought that as strongly as I do now. It's frightening. Like the wrong person in charge can mean some very, very, very bad things happen, and people are led astray, and untruth takes hold. And, we were watching To Be or Not to Be, which is that old movie about a theater troupe in Poland that takes place during the war, and, is a kind of the beginnings of the Holocaust. And just, it was scarier to me than it's ever been before. Like the Holocaust seems so far away and in the past, and it just seems more possible now than it ever did before. But anyway, bringing this back to activism, which is what you were talking about vis-a-vis your tarot, something I've experienced in talking to so many animal people, we don't tend to be like dynamic, loudmouth, natural activists. Some of us are, and that's all to the good, though I guess my use of the word loudmouth is a little pejorative. But we need all personalities, but there's a hell of a lot of introverts in this movement, hell of a lot of people who don't move forward to take the helm. And it's so important that we try to do it anyway, even though it doesn't come naturally, because I think that we have established that, it's frequently people who aren't quote unquote natural leaders who are better than the people who, a lot of people who take leadership positions are driven by ego and by insanity and all sorts of crazy things. And so I tend to think that the best characteristic in a leader is not thinking that they should lead. So if you don't think you should lead, you need to be a leader. Just put that in your hat. Yeah. And live with that, because it's the quietest person in the background who doesn't like to speak up who might have the most to say.
We were talking about that last week at the Flock Friday Zoom call, and Jen mentioned that when she recently did Encompass's DEI Institute that our hen house was one of the sponsors of, and I did the one before she did it, it was actually stated at the beginning of the training that we are going to sit in the silences in between people being called on, and we're not going to fill those silences because we know that a lot of people, it's not their instinct to necessarily speak up first. And so I tried to do that at the Flock Friday call with that inspiration, and I'm not sure I succeeded because I get really uncomfortable when there's space.
Everybody does. It's really, really hard. Try being a teacher. it's just painful. Yeah. You throw the question out there and they just all stare at you, and they stare at you, and they stare at you. And eventually one of them gives up and raises their hand.
And thus is teaching.
You have to wait them out, because the silence is making them stressed out too. So you have to wait them out and not be as stressed out as they are.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, part of being a safe and inclusive movement is to make sure that we have room for everyone, and that includes the introverts. Okay, so let's move to talking about vegan businesses. Our Hen House Supports Vegan Businesses is a program we started early this year because so many businesses were failing, and so we shout out some that have come across our radar, either because we tried them or because you told us. You can fill out the form at ourhenhouse.org/vegan businesses if you have a vegan business you want us to shout out. Oh, and we always make sure to feature at least one Black-owned business. So today we're going to start with Zoe's Vegan Delight. Zoe's Vegan Delight is an amazing woman Black-owned vegan catering business in Greenbelt, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. Her delicious food serves both your needs and your appetite, all without using animal products or GMO ingredients. Chef Zahoret Coates grew up in Israel and was raised in a vegan household. When she moved to the U.S., she started Zoe's Vegan Delight to offer up delicious, healthy vegan meals. Her menu includes savory dishes, raw cuisine, desserts, smoothies, fresh juices, and salads. Zoe offers catering services, meal plans, private cooking lessons, and cooking demos to those in the DC area. She's also been making her own beautifully crafted, colorful masks throughout the pandemic, and those are available for shipping. Check out Zoe's Vegan Delights on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Zoe's Vegan Delight, and it's ZOES Vegan Delight. So follow them and show them some love. They can really use it right now, even if you're not in the DC area. We're also asking people to follow some of the businesses that we're shouting out, regardless of whether they're local to you, because that helps businesses too. And we always include the links in the show notes for each episode.
And our second business is one you can support, literally support wherever you are. That's Rebel Cheese, which is a vegan deli based in Austin, Texas, because they ship vegan cheese gift baskets across the U.S. So, well, that's a timely idea. Your friends and family will love you for this. I would certainly love you for this. And Rebel Cheese makes artisan vegan cheese that tastes as good, if not better than dairy. I'm sure it's better than. Dining isn't available currently at their deli, but they still offer their full menu to go if you do happen to be in the Austin area, with cheese plates, vegan meats, made-to-order sandwiches, soups, and salads, plus hard-to-find vegan gourmet grocery items from around the world. And you can check them out at rebelcheese.com.
Yes. Oh. And now to the interview. By the way, I was doing this Instagram live the other day on Veg News for Fabulous Vegan, and any of the people who were joining us virtually wanted to talk about was cheese. It's like, that's what people are so passionate about. Anyway, I digress. To the interview, Gina Lynn has dedicated her entire life to animal advocacy and activism. After years of organizing protests and conferences and marches and a whole lot of other things, co-producing an internationally distributed grassroots animal rights magazine, and enduring the stress of government harassment due to being known as an organizer, Gina founded New Life Animal Sanctuary back in 2008 to rescue and rehabilitate animals no longer used in laboratories, including dogs and rats and pigs, rabbits, mice, pigeons, guinea pigs, goats, cats, hamsters, and the first and only, to their knowledge, llama. Gina will be joining Marianne right after this. Greetings, everybody. This is Jasmine Singer, and I wanted to make sure you knew about my new book, The Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan. Look good, feel good, and do good in 30 days. Brand new from Hachette in December 2020. Want to be fabulous? Go vegan. Maybe you're interested in it for the food, maybe it's the animals, or maybe climate change has got you thinking. Whatever your reason, maybe you don't quite know where to start. After all, doesn't going vegan mean you have to give up tasty snacks and cool shoes and a sense of humor and your leather couch? Nope, no way, and well, eventually. Covering everything from nutrition, you will get enough protein, promise, to dating, vegans have better sex, it's true. To fitness, you want to lift a car over your head? Sure. I am joining with the team at Veg News to bust all the myths and giving you all the facts about a plant-based lifestyle. With 30 easy recipes to get you started, the Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan will help you adopt a vegan lifestyle that's better for you, the animals, and the planet. And what's more fabulous than that? Get your copy today wherever books are sold, or go to jasminesinger.com/fabulous. Remember, there's no E on Jasmine. It's JASMINSINGER.com/fabulous. The Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan.
Welcome to our hen house, Gina.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really glad to have you here because what you're doing is so interesting and something I really want to know more about. Just to give people kind of an introduction, just tell us about New Life Animal Sanctuary's mission.
Our mission is to rescue and rehabilitate animals retired from laboratories.
And where are you located?
In Lake Elsinore, California.
And just to set the scene a little bit, who are you currently caring for? The species, the numbers? Give us a picture.
I believe we have 17 different species. We have llamas, goats, donkeys, 2 mini cows, pigs, sheep, chickens, a pony, dogs, cats, rabbits, rats, turkeys, ducks, and peafowl, and a pheasant.
Cool. A pheasant. It's always nice to have a pheasant in the home.
Yes. Oh, and a guinea fowl, and 2 guinea fowl.
So do you do adoptions or do you just care for the animals?
We do adoptions based on the species and based on the potential homes. We're not trying to keep every animal here forever, but it just depends.
So as you mentioned, your mission is an unusual one because you're not rescuing farm animals. You're not rescuing dogs and cats. You're rescuing animals from laboratories. And it's really hard to imagine laboratories being willing to let the animals go. And I know you pointed out on your website, this is everybody's first question. So
Right.
how does that work? Has that changed? How do you get the laboratories to give you animals?
It has changed a lot. When we first started and when we put that on our website, at that time, we were like, we don't know if this is going to work. Kind of an interesting aside, my partner at the time and I actually went around interviewing laboratories to ask if they would be willing to do this because we didn't even think that we could raise money to start it because we thought people are just going to be like, no way, that can't, labs are never going to give up their animals. So we went around, like we did our independent research, went around to labs interviewing them to ask if this is something that they would do so that we could then tell potential donors, they've said they'll do this, but we need the money to create it. And so it's worked. I mean, it's been different situations. Like often it's somebody who knows someone inside the lab and they maybe just mention like we have a bunch of rats. If we had a home for them, we'd release them, but otherwise they're going to be euthanized. And then maybe that person has heard of us. It's usually kind of that kind of thing, like word of mouth. Someone's friends with someone inside the lab and happens to have heard of us and happens to know that they have these animals that they may be willing to release, and we figure it out.
It kind of made me think of this situation, and I don't know whether this is still the situation because there are so many fewer race tracks with greyhounds. I am going somewhere with this. But it used to be back in the day that greyhound advocacy groups just had to completely stay away, well, actually from advocacy, because they couldn't maintain their relationships with the racetracks if they were going to get any dogs from them. Do you have that same problem that you have to temper what you would say about research on animals in order to maintain these relationships?
That's a really good question. And that's a tough one that I grapple with periodically because I don't ever want to compromise what our message is. But we have had, it has happened where like someone from a lab looked at our Facebook page and was just completely outraged and offended and took things that we had said personally, even though it had nothing to do with that particular lab, and wouldn't have any further dealings with us after that. But that's only happened once, luckily.
That's really interesting because it's maybe this has changed too, but I've always thought, I mean, with some reason, that the research community is particularly hostile towards the animal rights community, even more so than other animal use industries. Do you think that's shifting as well? And how is that shifting? They seem to be entities that are so far apart in their perspective.
Right. I think that the research industry will be the last to fall, I believe. But I also think that there is a shift. It's slower and it's more subtle and it's more. I wouldn't say. Let me back up. I wouldn't say that it's a shift like overall, but a shift amongst certain people. And I think there are few. I think there are few, but I do believe there are a few that are starting to kind of have a conscience about it. Like we have I'm going to tell you this story because I love this story, and sorry if it's a tangent, but we have a contact with a guy who works in the lab and he's worked there for like 30 years. And in the beginning, he said he never thought much of it. He just did what he was hired to do. And he now, after 30 years, he sees the repetition and the waste and he says, I just don't think anything comes of it. He says, I understand that they might have like higher motives, but he said, I don't see anything coming out of this. I've seen thousands of lives killed and I see nothing come of it. And he said, and it tears my heart apart. I can't even stand what I see. And I don't know how to do anything else now. So I feel stuck here, but this is what I do. So I think that there are people like that are afraid to say it out loud. They're afraid to come forward. But I think there are more and more people like that, I believe.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. And it's such an important reminder that we shouldn't put people in a box and assume they believe something. People are in all different places about everything. And even somebody who's been doing it for that many years has not shut down so completely that they can't see the animals at all.
Right.
Aren't there also some jurisdictions now that have laws requiring sanctuary if it's available?
Yes, for certain animals. I think for like dogs and cats. And I think possibly in some areas it's even for rabbits, but I'm not positive about that. And I think it's been going that way for primates for quite some time, possibly even on a national level. I'm sorry to say that I haven't kept up on the laws state by state, but there is a shift in that way also. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I that would also make the point that since obviously they wouldn't have to send animals to sanctuary if there isn't any sanctuary available, the fact that you are the only sanctuary I know of, there might be others. I'm not saying there aren't, but that does this is problematic.
There's one other one, the Kindness Ranch in Wyoming, and as far as I know, we're the only two.
And do you think that it's possible that if there were more, it's such a chicken and egg problem, and I don't think that's an exploitative expression, so I think it's okay to use it. But do you build like you said, you had to kind of go back and forth. You had to prove that you would be able to get the animals in order to get the money for the funding for the sanctuary, and if they're going to even think about releasing the animals, or if legislatures are going to think about passing laws to require them to, the sanctuaries kind of have to exist. So I can see that this is a movement waiting to grow.
Yeah, I think it is, and I see, even though there's only the two sanctuaries that I know of, I see a lot of other rescue groups that are stepping in to help when there are animals available. Like we've partnered with Ratty Rats in the Bay Area and Harvest Home in the Bay Area, and when there've been and Out to Pasture in Portland, Oregon, I know took in some pigeons from a laboratory, and just there's different rescues that aren't focused on this, but that are starting to get calls. Another one in San Diego, Farm Animal Refuge, they get calls sometimes from laboratories to help. So the sanctuaries don't have to be specific to animals from labs. They're starting to contact other places. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear, because one of the questions I was going to ask you is that these animals must sometimes have really special. I mean, I know animals coming out of farming situations are frequently in bad shape, but you must have animals who are extremely traumatized, who have lived for a long time in really bad conditions that really need extra special care. Do you find, I mean, am I right? And is this an area in which sanctuaries have trouble taking in animals, or sometimes have trouble taking in animals because of their special needs? Or do the animals just kind of, I know animals are pretty good at making do and
Right.
coming out. So how does that work?
Well, I find that most of the times when labs are willing to release animals, they're not going to release the ones that they've, chopped up and blinded and stuffed oven cleaner inside it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those are the ones, unfortunately, that they're going to kill. And there's nothing that I can do about that. So I believe that usually the ones they release are the ones that are like control groups or some kind of like benign experiment or psychology research or that kind of thing. That said, the most difficult animals difficult's not quite the word, challenging, that I've dealt with thus far are two dogs who are sitting in the room with me. I don't know if you heard, one was just kind of grunting. They have major PTSD from having been in the lab, and they are destructive unlike any other animals I've ever seen. And I believe it's because of the PTSD. Like, I can't even tell you. They like chew holes in my walls and chew holes in the floors, and they've torn up couches and mattresses. And it's not like in a normal playful dog kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more like they're getting out their anxiety. And I remember I used to post pictures all the time of some of the damage that was being done. And somebody was like, "Oh my God, how can you deal with this? Like, how can you tolerate this destruction?" And I said, after they